Hello and welcome to another late night talk. My guest this evening is the British author Ben Galley. He's written a number of dark and epic fantasy novels. He self-published his first novel, The Written, in 2010, and since then he's gone on to self-publish a number of books. So going back to the beginning, tell me your origin stories. How did you get into science fiction and fantasy?
That is probably all down to my parents. They were big into reading. Mostly my dad. He was kind of obsessed with The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, and strangely things like the Iliad and the Odyssey. And so he had me reading those when I was a kid, which was just a real kind of thrown in the deep end, especially with Lord of the Rings, and just reading through the appendices over and over again as a kid. Like, what does this mean? What is it? Yeah, so it's a real deep end, especially with the Greek mythology thrown in there as well. But yeah, it just instilled this huge love and passion for anything that wasn't the real world and anything that was to do with mythology, magic, gods, telling of stories. So yeah, I just kind of devoured all the classics, C.S. Lewis, etc., all sorts of things. And yeah, then kind of like discovered sci-fi and stuff and branched out and just devoured books when I was a kid and into my teens. And then at some point it just switched kind of around, I lose track these days, but it's basically around 11 or 12, I wrote my first book, and it was a hideously written story. It was about monkeys. I loved Redwall, which I believe has come up in another one of your talks at one point, but Redwall by Brian Jacks, and I was just absolutely obsessed with that. So I tried to copy it, but with monkeys in India, after watching some Attenborough documentary. Yeah, and that was my first foray in, and I loved the process of writing and just sitting, inside on sunny days with the blinds shut, just beavering away like a maniac. And yeah, wrote another one. Life got in the way, and then after kind of college and uni, after trying to be a musician for quite a number of years.
Oh, right, interesting.
Oh yeah, my base is right there. But yeah, after trying to do that for a number of years, I was working dead-end jobs in Guildford in the UK. Literally, I was working in a pasty kiosk in Guildford train station, which was just, 9x9 box cube, where I just shoveled hot pasties to angry commuters. And meanwhile, between customers, was editing on a big stack of my first book, which was The Written. And that came out in 2010 and self-published and never looked back since. And here I am, was it 10 years later now? Yeah.
So, well, it's quite interesting then. So did you originally straight away just think, I'm going to go straight for self-publishing, or did you look at traditional publishing first?
It was kind of, it was a very quick research project, I would say, because I knew my original dream since I was a kid, back in the days of writing about monkeys, was always to be an author. That was absolutely my dream. Yeah. To get paid for making up stories and telling lies and stuff like that.
Same.
Sounded awesome. Yeah. And so that was kind of when I rediscovered the love for it and spent 18 months, writing The Written in 2008, 2009, going to early 2010, I was like, right, do I go, well, it was more like, let's get an agent, let's go down the only path that I know about. And so I did a lot of Googling in those months and just kind of realized, weirdly, that there was another kind of path that was accessible now, and it kind of been on the rise for a number of years. And my first kind of example of that, and the first kind of example of self-publishing I found, was actually one of those horrible companies that are run by unscrupulous big fat cats that basically are publishing package providers.
Oh, like I can name Vanity Press.
Vanity Press, things like that.
Print something that's just, you send it, they print it, and they go, there's your book, and that's it. That's
yes. Yeah, but they charge you thousands for things and like tab on little packages and then just give you a shit cover and all that sort of stuff. So I came across Author House and was like, oh, this sounds like a great idea. And just something wasn't right about it. It felt a bit car salesman-y. And I just decided, no, let's see if I can do all the things that they're talking about, like, publishing on Amazon directly, print on demand, all these kind of buzzwords. I was like, I wonder if I can do that, myself. And kind of accidentally stumbled across the kind of DIY self-publishing method, where you're sort of, the project manager, you find a designer, editor, and just push it out yourself. And then, 6 months of kind of doing a lot of research and trial and error later, the book was out on Amazon, and I was, published, which was great. So, I considered traditional, in answer to the question, I considered traditional for probably about a week before, my Googlings just opened up a whole, different world, basically.
Yeah, because so when I started trying to get published years before that, self-publishing meant vanity publishing. And so for me, I was just kind of, oh, well, I'm not doing that. I just want to get, traditional publishing. But by the time I was already in the kind of works, self-publishing had totally changed and become a lot more, but very different, a lot more socially accepted. It wasn't just, oh, it's just vanity press. People have talked about it. Be like, oh, have you read this? It's self-published. And it was no longer a bad word anymore.
Exactly.
It changed by 2010. It changed, and there's lots of books coming out that way. So,
there was the self-publishing stigma, as I kind of wrote about and called and heard it called elsewhere as well. And that was, I remember being at, I organised a signing for my first couple of books, or many signings, organised tours and stuff. But yeah, I remember sat at a Waterstones in the UK once, and a guy comes up and looks at this array of books that I had on the table. And he looks at me and he's like, "Did you write this?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, he's looking at the spine. He's like, "Who's the publisher?" I was like, "Oh, I am." And he just immediately put the book down and walked off.
Wow.
Nothing else said. Just didn't see him again. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was kind of fun. Yeah, back in that was about 2011. It's changed a lot, but there are still a few people that just something sticks in their craw with it.
Well, it's the same. Like, for all of the advances we've made in making fantasy less weird, there's still a lot of muggles, as I call them, that if you tell them, do you write fantasy, they go, what is it, like elves and goblins? And I'm like, or elves and fairies, they sort of say things like that, and you're like, well, no. And I'm like, have you never heard of anything like Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings, or all these obvious touchstones that you can point at now? But there's still a lot of stigma towards fantasy still, which I don't think people outside who the genre don't get.
Yeah, I think it's seen kind of by the outside kind of world as potentially a bit kind of nerdy or geeky, which I'm proud of and I celebrate. I think we all do.
Yeah.
Also, someone once, I said that to someone I met randomly, I can't remember where, but I just remember their response. I said, "Oh, I'm an author. I write fantasy," and she's like erotica, like 50 Shades of Grey. I'm like, no. Absolutely not.
Adult fantasy.
I think I mistakenly used that term.
Different kind of adult fantasy. Yeah.
Swords and magic and dragons type of fantasy. Love it.
Yeah. That's what we actually mean, not the other kind. But anyway, so in the written, your first book, there's a lot of kind of supernatural. There's a lot of monsters and dragons. And was this something you consciously put in, or was it just stuff that you wanted to see in the world?
Yeah, I mean, the genesis for the written was, it was one of those kind of like lightning strike moments where just, for instance, the name Emaneska and kind of the idea of the character just popped into my head one day. But I can remember where I was and what I was watching when it happened. I always kind of think that it was kind of a reaction to that. And I was watching BBC's Merlin. So anyone from the US or elsewhere from the UK is just classic British adaptation of the classic Merlin story. But it was kind of done, I don't know if you remember it or you watched it.
It's on Netflix now. I've seen
it.
Right, they put it on Netflix now. So if you haven't seen it, go and watch it, kids. It's good fun.
Yeah, get yourself a VPN if not, and then you can watch it. And it is good. And you said, kids, ironically, it was kind of meant for a younger audience.
Yes.
And I remember my mum was like really into it. She loves fantasy as well. And she was just watching it, and I was just sat there, hating life, trying to come up with a story idea to get me out of my dead-end jobs. And I remember just watching the first episode of Merlin sort of over my notebook and just like hating it. And just being like, fucking, that's not a dragon. Why isn't he punching that man in the face? And I've been reading, dark fantasy at the time, like things like American Gods, which is surprisingly brutal. And, just really getting back into my reading. And I was really frustrated because I just saw this kind of fantasy offshoot being really kind of just weak and lame, and it was Arthurian legend should be gritty and powerful. And so I thought, fuck it, I'm going to do my own version of this. So a lot of it is Arthurian kind of based, but kind of doesn't feature much of that and goes to the Norse instead. But I kind of blame that frustration with a lighter side of fantasy as the reason why I kind of got stuck in. And then from there, the ideas just snowballed. So I put in a vampire, for example, as one of the main side characters. Main side characters. Because kind of to twist the trope of, because again, that was at the time of like Twilight, True Blood, and all this, like, if you're a vampire, you have to somehow be shirtless all the time.
And sparkling, for some reason.
Exactly. yeah, so I wanted this kind of like, oh yeah, fuck that. Real vampires don't sparkle. And so I basically just wanted to kind of, it's like a knee-jerk reaction against that. So my vampire is very classic, but also just this brutal animal when he wants to be. And yeah, so I kind of threw in a lot of monsters and things like that because I wanted that classic romp, almost like dungeon crawler, monster slayer character, who's this, the written is all based around a mage called Farden. And he is basically just an elite mage, elite soldier that's on the fringes of this kingdom, just trying to protect the peace or keep the peace and protect people from magic and monsters. And so, yeah, there had to be a lot of magic and a lot of monsters going awry for the first couple of, I would say, yeah, the first kind of half of the book. And yeah, just had so much fun with it. I kept throwing, extra things in. And, that was my debut book. I've learned to kind of curb my enthusiasm just a little bit here and there. But yeah, that book ended up being full of ideas. And to be honest, that's a trend that carried through the series. And now into the new series, there's a lot of facets, a lot of different creatures and things. In fact, I'm writing a quest storyline at the moment. And the quest is comprised of a dragon, a minotaur, a vampire, sort of a beast woman that's kind of like fawnish, and then a certain written mage and a human. So it's, yeah, a lot of stuff going on.
Did you plan this series then, given that you've thrown all this stuff into that world and you've written the first book and end up being a 4-book series? Is that right? Your first one, the
Yeah, the original series did. Yeah, Emaneska series.
So when did you start planning it?
Well, it was weird because I planned out. I've always been a planner for some reason. I just kind of naturally seem to do that, and I kind of discovery right in between the kind of structure of my plan.
Same as me.
But yeah, I started. Yeah, I find it kind of a fun way to do it, and a nice balance between both.
Yeah,
both kind of styles. And so yeah, I just basically decided to start planning the written out, and then that plan kind of extended into Pale Kings. So I was always kind of pushing the plan ahead, maybe a book and a half. But again, that discovery element led me off on a load of different tangents and ideas, which ultimately created a load of threads that I didn't even realize existed until like books 3 and 4. And then that gleaming moment that you can't plan and it's nothing to do with you, but somehow all the plot lines and things like that come together and you can see the ending. You're like, oh, that's the book I've been writing all this time. That's what it's about. And yeah, it's this universe just flicks a switch, I think. But yeah, so I did that, and I had this idea for the newest series, the Scarlet Chronicles. I always had like, these characters got to come back. I left it, I concluded the whole trilogy, but there is, they're still alive, they're somewhere out there. Some of them at least. No spoilers, but yeah. And yeah, so I kind of just started plotting this one over the last couple of years, just taking some of the best ideas that I found and thought, I'm reserving those for Emaneska. And yeah, so it was great fun to dip back into it. And then as soon as I kind of started, I was like, right, I have to plan this because I've done the classic thing of having far too many ideas, far too many characters, spread across far too big a continent. But yeah, so that's just Emaneska, and that's the style it is. But it's been great to get back into it.
Because you've done, as you said, this one's based in Norse mythology or Nordic mythology, but you've done other types of books as well. Like I know you went on and did the Scarlet Star trilogy, which sounds right up my street. It really reminds me of like David Gemmell's John Shannon novels and John Horner Jacobs' Incorruptibles. It kind of reminds me of that because it's a mix of magic and demons and Western setting, and all those two series both have some elements the same as the Scarlet Star.
Yeah, that was I might have made a mistake kind of just switching in terms of like branding and business minded mistake, switching from classic epic Norse mythology that everyone's kind of familiar and comfortable with to alternate history, weird Western fairies as well. There is a fairy in it.
Yes.
And so yeah, that was kind of maybe a mistake, but it was something that I really, really enjoyed writing. I still look fondly, up on that series, and it's something I might go back to. I don't know. It's never been the best seller out of my books, but it was just a fun romp in a world that was just always burning a hole in the back of my mind, which is the western side of the US hasn't been discovered yet. And so yeah, everything's a bit steam and clockwork and things like that. So they're using a railway to push through it's in Wyoming as well, set in 1867. And so all these monsters are coming, well, there's all sorts of things, but yeah, all these things are coming out of kind of the frontier, and it's so wild that they can't really push forward very far each day. So yeah, that was kind of cool. And then just threw an orphan with a magical ability and a kind of badass fairy into it, who's always in just like black armor. He looks more like a dark elf from something like Skyrim, but he's about this big. Yeah. He's funny. He's the main character sidekick. He's foul-mouthed, he's a drunkard, he's an outcast, and he's a bit of a murderer as well. He's kind of lethal, so he'll cut your throat quicker than you can see him. So yeah, that was fun.
Sounds nasty and dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a fun character to write, actually. Rin Renan.
So you've had to kind of steer your own career, as it were, because I do know you have an agent, and we'll kind of come on to that, but
yeah,
but you basically decide which direction you want to go in next, and that's it. You just start writing a new world, start planning it, and start working on the next series.
Yeah, unless it's like completely mental and, written backwards and something, or written in code, no one's going to really buy. I think commercially a little bit, having learned that kind of, I wouldn't say it was a mistake, like I said, but, having veered into Weird West, alternate history, steampunk for a bit, and then come back to kind of more traditional fantasy, I've learned that lesson of what people really like to enjoy. I'll rephrase that. I've kind of learned what sells a bit more, it's a bit more commercial rather than something I love and want to write. So I tried to balance those. I have since Blood Rush. So I've always tried to push an envelope in every book, or try and do something different. So for instance, Chasing Graves, my last trilogy, was first person and second person. Sorry, not second, third. Dear Lord, that would be weird.
Yeah. That would be weird.
Insanely weird. Ooh, maybe that's my next book. Yeah. But I always like to kind of push a boundary or twist something where I can. So yeah, I've learned to kind of, like I said, curb my enthusiasm just a little bit, or reframe it in a commercial way, or at least write it in a commercial way where it's the classic storyline wrapped up in something bizarre.
So do you test out your ideas with someone even before you, or do you talk through them with friends before you start working on them to see? Because the equivalent is, for me, I could say to my agent, right, I've written a trilogy in fantasy. Now I'm going to write a romance trilogy. And she'd be like, do you really think now's the right time to diversify into a totally new genre? Because you have to build, because there's that thing, as you said, it's the commercial aspect. We could write what we want, and maybe you'd sell 5 copies, but at the same time, publishing is a commercial business, whether it's self-publishing or traditional. So there's always this balance between commercial fiction and what you want to write, and it's completely based upon my imagination and lies that people are buying, versus it's still got to go somewhere and do something. So who do you test out your ideas on?
So I've got quite I love my friends dearly, my friends out here in Canada, all my friends, but my core group out here aren't as into fantasy as I am. In fact, not at all.
Right, okay.
So, and I don't blame them, I love them for it, because, people are into different things, and some people really struggle with things of that imaginative nature. For instance, with dragons and magic, people just cannot get to grips with it, and that's absolutely fine. So my friends are kind of that ilk. I think one of my friends, Lucy, she's kind of seen maybe a handful of Marvel films, so I can kind of talk about geeky things and like sneak it into conversation. Yeah. Unlike that meme where I'm the guy with the Trojan horse and Troy's normal conversation, and mine inside the horse is Lord of the Rings conversation, and I'm just pushing it into Troy. So when I come up with an idea that I kind of want to test, I actually go to them first, and I say, like, I've come up with this idea, and I try and frame it in not too geeky way. But I try and frame it in the idea of the story or the character, or even the world sometimes, because that leads a lot of my story ideas. And so I kind of test it on them. And if they're like, oh, yeah, actually, that's pretty cool, and don't make any jokes, then I'm like, maybe I've got something here.
The hook is working. Yes, there's something there.
Yeah. I mean, it's like Game of Thrones. I mean, that's hugely popular across broad demographics, like fantasy fans, people who've never touched fantasy before. My girlfriend Rachel loved it, and again, I don't blame her for this, I don't mind whatsoever, but she's never read any of my books because fantasy's not her thing. She prefers true crime and murder fiction, things like that. So I'm like, that's cool. But she was devouring that and just like, can we watch another episode? So that was great to see. So yeah, I try and kind of yeah, test it on non-fantasy fans to see if the story would shine through the imagination or shine through the kind of weird stuff that they don't like. And that's maybe how I access, more fan groups, broader reader groups, things like that. So yeah, and then I go to kind of like my alpha readers who are just fellow authors, like author groups, and I've got this idea, what do you reckon? And then and I'm very secretive. I like to kind of write the thing and then share it. So that kind of stage is very quick for me. It doesn't involve too many people, and I kind of just get a broad idea and make sure they're curbing my enthusiasm as well. And then I just dive in, and if I'm not feeling it, then it's I don't write it and move on to a new idea, which I haven't actually really, I've only done that once. So I'm one of these things, if I start something, I normally finish it, kind of whether it's worth it or not. To my fault sometimes.
Yeah, that's fair enough. There's some questions from readers we'll come on to at the end, but on the kind of self-publishing side, now I know that you're a self-publishing consultant, and there's also an ebook on the subject that you've written about this, so I'll put that in the link below so people can.
It's way back now. It's probably way out of date.
That was one of my questions, because things have changed since you probably wrote it when you started self-publishing in 2010. But so what's the process for you? Because for traditional publishing, it's probably similar-ish, but I don't see some parts of it. So you've written a first draft. Do you then work with an editor once you finish editing it yourself? What's the process for you?
Yes, absolutely. And it's something that, there's two main processes you really don't want to skip in self-publishing. And, it's the cover design and the editing. And so many people skip it or kind of don't focus on it or don't spend the required money on it. And yet it's so vital. Because essentially the process of self-publishing is doing exactly what the traditional publishers do in taking, a sheaf of paper with some words on it and making it into something that could be sold by retailers online or physically.
Yes.
So, you just have to kind of follow the same steps. And that's what self-publishing does and always has tried to do, is emulate traditional publishing. So I do a first draft, a second draft, third draft, sometimes a fourth, or I might run it through kind of like a very, very hardcore spell check just to catch silly errors that will waste the editor's time. Well, not waste, but just kind of use up more of the time that I'm paying for.
Yes.
And then send it off to a professional editor for at least one round of copy editing, maybe with a bit of structural editing and developmental thrown in as well. And then basically, usually I'll do another proofreading stage after that. Within that, I haven't done it for the last couple of series, or last couple of books rather, but I will use beta readers, and they will normally go in between one of the editing stages. So sometimes when I finish it and I edit it myself, then it goes to beta readers, and that's again a bit more developmental. They catch spelling errors and grammatical mistakes, which is really useful. But it's kind of like, how does the story flow? How obsessed are you with these characters and stories, or the plot lines? And then then it will go to the editor. And that's often a useful stage. I've just been kind of like trying to truncate my process of the last couple of books, and I've also been really strange and secret. So in terms of that, I think that's basically the editing process. And then from that, it's cover design. Do the same thing. You can often do the same thing or the same two processes at once while the editor's editing. And then professional cover designer, someone who's going to get you original art. A lot of people are using stock-made covers, and I've literally seen 3 books with the same cover in a short space of time since the start of the year. And while it's the book market is huge, and the chances of running across all 3 slimmer, it's still not original. And I think if the reader, I don't think it cheapens it for the reader, but for me as a book producer and self-published author, to me, it kind of cheapens it if someone had the same art. I don't even like it when someone's got the same font as me. So I prefer to be as original as possible and be, just kind of, it's your brand, and as professional, obviously gets you looking exactly like all the other books on the shelf, the traditionally professionally published books as well. So and then formatting, that's the last stage, getting it, into ebook formats, into print on demand formats, basically PDFs, Mobis and EPUBs. That usually takes professional or some learning and some clever programs. I always just use someone else because they're much faster than I am. And that's essentially it. You then have a file that's ready to publish, ready to go, and off they go. There's like little minutiae and things like ISBNs and which platform to use and metadata and stuff like that. But that is essentially, the general self-publishing process.
because with traditional publishing, as you say, it's most of that stuff as well. It's just as the author, a traditional publisher author, I don't do some of that. I don't see some of that. It's handled by other people in the publisher. Whereas you are the publisher, you're just outsourcing it yourself to other people to do it for you.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I see it as like a project management kind of exercise in a way.
Yeah.
You are the project manager of this book publishing project. So you have to find your individual professionals, line them up, arrange them, and then ship out the product. When you think of it in quite a business mindset like that, it helps to kind of remove. I find working with like thousands of authors over the last 10 years. 8 years now being a consultant, it's there's so much passion, and therefore there's also a lot of fear in terms of getting it wrong. And the beauty of these platforms, like publishing on Amazon or even print on demand now, is you can change most things after the fact. If I find a typo, I can upload a new file and have it live within 12 hours. And that's it. So you're very agile as a self-published author. There's just a lot more work in the actual publishing and marketing processes.
Yes. What about the speed? Because if I hand a book first, draft in on the 1st of January, most of the time with traditional publishing, fast would be coming out in 12 months because it has to go through all these other processes. And they're doing it around other things and lists for publishers and so on. But what's the kind of speed like for you? How much faster, if you wanted to, or do you typically put a book out?
I try to be. People are voracious, and it's that kind of. I call it I don't know if I've coined this or heard it somewhere, but I just kind of call it like the Netflix effect in a way. It's like this binge mentality. This is why a lot of people. It's something I'm going to be writing about this week. Actually, is unfortunately people will leave off. They'll see your book come out, but they won't buy the first in the series, and they'll wait for the whole series because then they can binge it. And unfortunately, especially from a trad world, that really hurts books' chances to then, complete the whole trilogy. So, I'll be talking about that in the blog, but that's basically it. But that's a product of the binge mentality that I think Netflix and other streaming platforms, especially like Spotify as well, everything on demand when you want it as much as you want, devour it all. And I think books are going that way. That's why we're seeing, more people signing up to Kindle Unlimited and other programs, because they can just read as much as they want. And especially as people are putting an increased kind of focus on escapism and getting out of this world we find ourselves in right now.
Yeah, understandable.
Exactly. Yeah. So for all those reasons, I try to maintain a pretty healthy and swift release schedule. If everything goes well, from putting the first chapter down, I'll take it. So once I complete the book,
you only haven't finished it. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. So if I have my professionals all lined up, ready to go, my book team anyway, so I can, if they're free, let's say they got nothing on, editing might take a month or two. The book cover will be happening during that. I'll be lining everything up, like metadata, like writing the blurb, things like that. I can even kind of put it on the platforms and save as drafts, ready to go. Once I have those files back, my formatter takes 24 to 48 hours. And so I can then have basically the files uploaded onto the store the next day, almost, after the files come back, and I've checked them over, if I want to be really speedy. And then the actual publishing takes 10 minutes if you have the metadata in the master document. Bob's your uncle. I haven't said that in 4 years of living in Canada. I think I've actually ever said that before. And then, it's literally on the store within, give or take 12 to 24 hours, depending on which platform, file size, etc. That's it. So you're looking at basically 2.5 months if you had everything in up, ready to go.
Yeah, in a perfect world,
kind of rush it. In a perfect world.
Perfect world, 3 months. Say 3 months. That's compared
That's
to
it.
12 months is generous, I would say, for traditional publishing.
That's it. But you're a very small machine, and then you have a very large machine with lots of cogs.
You're just a lot more agile. You can do things in 3 months that I have no control over. Once I've sent my book off to the editor, they fit it in when they can. The copy editor does the same. The proofreader does it the same. Around other things, they do it, and I get this period where I have nothing for months, and then I'll get something feedback like, right, coming back in 2 weeks, and then it goes off again. And I don't hear anything for a couple of months again, and it's like,
that's it.
Okay, and I just have to wait around, but work on the next one.
Which is something that I think is just it's part and parcel, unless something major changes or there's a big kind of, I don't know, upheaval somehow. That's the way the industry has worked for 150 years and probably will for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think some of it is a natural byproduct of being a large company and having lots of moving pieces. Otherwise, I mean, I think there's a lot of some publishers, not within the fantasy world, but there's a lot of publishers that kind of just didn't go digital back in 2010 and wondered why, what these ebooks were all about. And I think like that. And we, publishers or individual authors rather can actually kind of change to trends as well a bit quicker. We can write and get a book out there rather than, the querying stages and things like that. However, this sounds all wonderful, Stephen, apart from the fact that you then have to put in upwards of I know some authors that spend up to 10 grand putting a book out, and some probably even more. So there is that. We have to put the upfront money in, and there's the work and the all of that. So yeah, there's all for the last 10 years, I've always kind of looked at traditional publishing and being like, that would be nice, to have the best of both worlds and things like that, and be kind of, hybrid for, different series and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of the goal. We'll see.
I think a lot more authors are becoming more hybrids, like some, but you also get the kind of weird crossovers. Like some people have started in self-publishing and have ended up traditional publishing, like, whether it's fantasy or not. I mean, James Oswald, I only know because he's got the same agent me, does crime novels. He originally self-published on Amazon, and then they went, oh, this is quite good, and he got picked up.
Yeah.
But then you look at, Fires of Vengeance by Evan Winter. He originally self-published that, and that's pure fantasy. And then he got picked up, and now he's with Orbit. And
doing incredibly well.
But you get people who cross over. Like, there's a couple of things that I think are so niche that I fancy doing that I don't think would go for a bigger publisher. But I'm thinking, I'll probably self-publish that myself in the future, just because I want to put it out there. And it's not frowned upon anymore like it used to be. It's very clear lines between types of author,
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's, different series do suit different things. So for instance, if I, like you said, kind of a very niche, non-commercial idea that you would never sell to a publisher because they wouldn't take the chance on it. Again, from a business mindset, it's perfectly fine. But you could, let's say if you had you've got a following, things like that, you could easily put a book out that your following would be interested in, that's independent of the publisher that put it out. And that's, it's all kind of come at once since the early 2000s, but the beauty of combining things like mailing lists, social media, or Patreons, however you kind of build a fan base and communicate with that fan base, and having control over that as a trad author or as a self-pub author is great, because we kind of give ourselves, by building this fan base and this kind of world of readers, we give ourselves the option, I think, even a bit more to go from trad to self-pub, or see what happens with going from self to trad.
So interestingly, a weird crossover that you have is that you have a literary agent, which most people associate just with being traditionally published. So tell me about your agent and how that works for those who are probably baffled by it.
Well, it's kind of, again, the publishing industry being well established and lots of different facets to it. Licensing is an option that a lot of authors can explore. Normally that's done through publishers or, existing agents, or through a very traditional path. But there's no reason why, any author can get an agent and explore licensing opportunities. Same way as, like, technically we could all try and email or get in touch with publishers ourselves and represent ourselves. But agents have a bit more of an in, through their just experience, contacts, place in the industry. So John Gerald, my agent, has been working in this industry and owning it in this industry for a long time. So it's great to kind of work with him and to be working with him still. We've been, I think it was like almost a year and a half now, I want to say, maybe more. God, it feels like the last year is about 20 years long. Yeah,
it does. January was 85 days by itself.
That's it.
It's just like...
I've lost all concept of which year was which now. But so that was basically the plan with John. I've got lots of things in the pipeline, some that I'm going to reserve for self-publishing, some that I'd actually like to see what a publisher might think of. So getting basically that hybrid approach and having John to have certain things that he can shop around to publishers gave me maybe a bit more of an in than I have, or gives me. And then we've been kind of exploring things like translation, audio rights, things like that, and all the other kind of different areas aside from just selling paperback rights in UK or paperback rights in US and things like that. So it's kind of fun. It's we'll see where it goes. Like all things, it's a great experiment, and that's, you know, when you're an author trying to make it in this world, it's might as well try different things.
Yeah, that's I think that's a bit of one of the mysteries sometimes. People, when I talk to them about being a traditionally published author, and they sort of say, well, you know, what does the agent do and how do international rights work? And I have to kind of explain that, you know, I don't go out to the individual publishers overseas and go, buy my book. It's, you know, that's part of what the agent does. Equally, the publisher sorts out the audio book, so I don't, you know, do that kind of stuff. Because it's probably not quite the same as you, but do you know what your rough sort of splits are between like paperback and ebook? Because I was looking at mine, and I think it's changed over the last few years, but I think mine are roughly something like maybe 40 to 50% is paperback, but it could be 30 or even 40% or ebook, and, you know, maybe 10 to 20 audio. So there's this, it used to be, you know, you go back 15 years ago, ebooks were nothing. They were, you know, a tiny percentage. Now, they have so many, like someone can say, right, put your book on a deal for 99p for the first book for a week. And then the second book is full price. And people will burn through that on a Kindle and read it and then go, right, now I'll buy the next one. They can get it in 10 seconds.
Yeah, it's so convenient for the reader. And, you know, and that's why there was so much of a kind of a big sea change for the publishing industry. It was that convenience. And then Amazon coming along in, I think it's 2007, it was like, here's a direct access to our platform designed for authors. Here you go. And it also comes with a Kindle that everyone can now read on. And it was just like, that was the big moment. I mean, I was 3 years after that, 2 years after that, but I still think if that hadn't have happened, I think we'd still be way behind, because it's spurred all the other platforms as well. But yeah, in terms of splits, going back to that, I mean, it's overwhelmingly ebook, and also for a lot of indie authors, especially like me, who kind of went exclusive with Amazon about a year and a half back now, to basically get access to a kind of different form of revenue, which is the per page reads. And so obviously when people read our books on Kindle Unlimited, we get paid 0.no, etc. for a page, which sounds tiny and doesn't sound worthwhile, but actually over, you know, a course of you know, a 600-page book, or, you know, a 4-book series or a 15-book backlist, you can actually make more than the individual book sold. And so a lot of authors, you know, myself included, have been kind of relying on that, I'd say, for the bulk of our income. I know a couple of authors who it's, you know, 50, I'm probably roughly, I would say, between the digital, if I were to split digital, I'm about 65% page reads from Amazon, and then ebooks units sold. Overall, I would say it's probably about 80% ebooks, 20% paperback. Wow. Audiobooks probably factor for about 10 to 20% of that, but that's an area I'm growing just because I've finally got my rights back for the Emaneska series.
Excellent.
It was wrapped up in a contract for years, and I finally got it back, and I'm really excited to see what I can do with it. But yeah, we'll see. That's hush hush. Obviously, we'll keep that quiet.
Okay.
We'll see. No, I don't mind. I'm going to be talking about it soon anyway.
Right. Wow. Yeah, because the landscape is changing a lot, as you said, in the last few years, and I do wonder what's next. And I mean, I know Audible are getting a lot more involved in doing proper audio dramas, not quite with Foley sound stages and stuff, but they get like a proper full cast, and they look at doing proper readings and that kind of stuff. And I wonder if we're going to see more of that in the future with fantasy on the rise.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's going to be great. I mean, again, we're really at the cusp of like a technology, well, I'd say, in terms of the kind of surge we've seen in ebooks, I think we're going to see the same sort of surge in audiobooks in general. Yeah. We've already seen a massive resurgence of it, and I just think it kind of suits the busy lifestyle, or at least, you know, the work from home lifestyle, where you're kind of multitasking a lot more. You know, you might, for instance, I have Netflix on when I clean just because it's nice. I don't know, it's something on in the background. In fact, I have Netflix on most of the day when I'm not writing, just because it's stuff in the background, right? Obviously, people, you know, driving around a bit more, they can listen to audiobooks. It's so convenient. And I think that's kind of seen, you know, podcasts as well. We've just seen a real preference for audio, not video, which is amazing, just going to the roof at the moment. So I think people are going to start playing around with that. I was really surprised when I had 2 narrators for the Chasing Graves trilogy. I thought that was a brilliant idea, which was the first and the third person. And I think, I've seen a lot more of those examples coming out, and I think, yeah, I really like the idea of a cast, and yeah, maybe some Foley thrown in there, some like thunderstorm effects. I love that shit. So yeah, I think we will see this trend of audiobooks continue. I think you're right, absolutely. I think we'll see audiobooks becoming more complicated, a bit more of like big events as well, I think. And I think also a lot of kind of transition between books, audiobooks, and Netflix, web series, things like that. Those things are going to become more accessible as well.
And there's a lot of adaptations now at the moment. I mean, I know the streaming platforms are screaming for content. There's so many adaptations of fantasy stuff that's come up in the last 6 months. I can rattle off half a dozen of people and friends that I know, and if something is like, oh, that one's getting adapted, and that one, and that one, and I expect there'll be more going forward, because fantasy is just kind of, there's still that stigma with reading for some people, but watching TV, somehow that's okay. That just makes it a bit more acceptable. But
somehow cerebral again, isn't it? You're watching The Witcher. You're fine. You're still reading.
Like, but read the books. Well, no, I'm not going to do that. It's like,
I've seen it. Yeah, it's kind of strange, isn't it? But do you find as well the idea of, like, I swear last year I completed Netflix, and I'm still waiting for, like, I can't wait for season 2 of this to come out. And like, when's this series coming out? Oh, I've heard about this adaptation, but it's like years off. And there's still a thirst, even though everything is on demand. I mean, I've got like Disney Prime, Prime with Crave and MGM and all the other things. I've got I've got like 5 different streaming channels plus YouTube. And for some reason, I still can't find what I want to watch. I can't find enough of, like, the Game of Thrones vacuum, basically, which The Witcher is filling for the moment. But yeah, Shannara didn't quite fill. All that sort of stuff. There's still a thirst. There's still people wanting more constantly.
Yes.
So it's not like we're going to have so much content that we don't know what to do with it. I just think there'll be more opportunity for these production studios and streaming services to create even more of it. Just like, yeah, I can't wait. Wow. Bar any sort of meteor. This is because I watched Greenland the other day. Barring any sort of like extinction event, it's going to be an exciting time.
Yeah, you've got Pete McLean's novels coming out.
That's going to be great.
Oh, yeah, Brian McClellan's Powder Mage trilogy has been adapted. Gareth Powell's sci-fi trilogy has been adapted.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one. That was a couple of weeks ago announced.
I'm sure there's a couple more announced, and I'm just like, right, okay, that one and this one, and Nicholas Eames' books, the band, have been optioned. Every time I ask him, he's like, I don't know what's going on, so don't ask me. But they've been optioned. So that's something else.
That's a good start. Yeah, that's definitely a good start. Yeah,
it's. I sometimes wonder, with all kind of preference for audio and something, part of one of my in my back of my mind is to write something specifically for audio, like a fantasy story, but with the full cast and a thing. So it's not quite a radio drama, because it's not, tune in next week to find out if he escapes them out of the volcano. It's not that, but like a proper audio drama story.
That'd be quite cool. Yeah, I mean, I think I can see a lot of some authors kind of moving into things like script writing, or even just like, maybe radio drama script writing, things like that. Writing, like you said, specifically for different formats that aren't between 2 covers. And I mean, I started writing for games last year, which is something I've never done before and absolutely loved doing. It's last year. No, it's before. I can't even.
Last year was 2000. We didn't do anything in 2020. No one went anywhere.
No, I just realized, because we had to start working in the office because of the COVID. Yeah, so 2018, I don't know. At some point in the past. That's it. And then I'm just going to start using the other day.
Yes.
Because I use that, and I can mean 2010 with the other day.
Anytime between now and the past. When I say the other day, that's what I mean. Yeah.
It cannot be today. It might actually be tomorrow, but it can't be today. But it's, at some point, I started working with a game company, and it was really enjoyable, and it was just really fun to write in a completely different format, more classic D&D sort of instructional, explanational sort of stuff, which is fun, technical but fun. And that's an avenue that I thought at one point, this could actually be a very cool side gig. And something to branch out into. So I think authors of all types have got lots of different options and lots of things to pursue. It's almost too much going on, but exciting all the same.
Yeah. So you've now got Forever King. You've returned to the world of Emaneska.
Yes.
And is this going to be a trilogy, or have you planned it to a certain
That's
degree
it.
again.
Yeah, though I said that when I got to the end of Pale Kings in 2012, or whenever it was, and then somehow it turned into a quadrilogy, and I'd split Dead Stars into Dead Stars 1 and 2. So yeah, at the moment it is planned out to be a trilogy. So I'm working on the second book at the moment, roughly. It's slow going at the moment, but I'm roughly halfway through on that. That's called Heavy Lies the Crown. Doing a cover reveal, actually, if I can do a little plug, on Fantasy Book Critic on March 1st. So that's going to be fun.
Right, yeah.
And so I get to show it off. At the moment, the only thing, only little teasers and my phone background, which I'm not going to show you.
No, fine.
Too much away.
No.
I was wondering if I could just be like, I'm really proud of it. Yeah, it's something now I'm thinking about it. Yeah, it could be a quadrilogy, but for the moment we have Forever King, Heavy Lies the Crown, and then To Kill a God is book 3, which my plan is to hopefully get book 2 out by the summer, and then maybe winter, early next year for book 3. So yeah, should be complete soonish. We'll see.
Excellent. Yeah. So we had some questions in from people. David asked, which character that you've created do you enjoy writing lines for the most?
Chasing Graves. Yeah, not Chasing Graves, that was the book it was in. Caltro Basalt from Chasing Graves has been the most enjoyable today. There's a couple of close contenders, Loki being one of them from the Emanesker and Scarlet Chronicles, just because he's a bastard and I love writing villains. And he is just the ultimate, just smarmy. He's a weird villain in my books, but he's just this smarmy little bastard. And he's just so cutting and sarcastic all the time. So he was fun. And then otherwise, the other contender would be Rin the fairy, because it's so fun writing someone who's this big and you get to write the world from that perspective, like he's hiding behind people's boots and like a rat comes up. So that was just real fun in terms of an experience. But the winners, got to be Caltro, because it's probably because of the fact I was writing from first person, which is something I've never done in terms of the books that I've published. I've done it a lot, but I haven't published those yet. It was just kind of quite fun to really dig into his character, his situation, being murdered in the first chapter. It's not a spoiler, it's on the cover. Yep. It's on the blurb. And then, just that kind of his situation was really fun, but he is this, similar to Loki's, this kind of like really cutting, witty bastard, basically. But he's a lot more humorous than kind of Loki, and he makes a lot more jokes, and he just always says the wrong thing at the wrong time, always puts his foot into it, or his foot in his mouth, and he's quite fun. So it was good writing 3 books of him, especially when he teams up with a talking sword who talks more than Caltro does, and they kind of clash. So probably him.
Okay. And Justin's asked, what's your best personal moment of your career to date? That's quite a tough question, I guess.
It is, and I thought of one earlier because I saw this question yesterday, and I thought of one, and I've completely fucking forgotten it. What was it? Oh no, I had it. Well, the one I was considering, and hopefully it'll come back to me as I'm talking out loud, which usually happens, was seeing my book on the shelf. That was in 2010 or 11. 2011, because I published in December. So Guildford Waterstones were hugely supportive of me as a local author.
Yep.
I happen to know a couple of people in there through the music world. And then, they kind of took a chance and stocked my book without me having to like sneak in and just put it on the shelf myself. They genuinely stocked my book and continued to stock it. And, a couple of months after actually publishing a book for the first time and only having kind of print on demand copies, at home and on Amazon, it was, I know it was my local bookshop, but walking in and seeing your book between Gemmell and Gaiman, or Gaiman and Gemmell, was a pretty special moment. And I was like, this is real. This is actually real now. Right, let's get another one on that shelf and another one, etc. So that was probably it. That was it. Yes. At the last moment, it's got to be the written hit bestseller status on Amazon in a couple of categories last year and the year, no, not last year, 2019, from the back of 2018 into 19. And so, that was just a real, after kind of 8 years of it being out, and just racked up a load of readers. It sold over 100,000 copies, the whole series. But obviously that's over a long period, so the readers are kind of there. but they never come together at one point to get it to bestseller status, and that happened, with a bit of work and marketing and things like that, and it stuck there. So that was to see that little orange tag on Amazon, first time ever for me as well. It was just like validation. And I thought, it stuck around for almost a month actually, which was good. So
that's really good.
That's fantastic. That was fun. I knew I'd remember it.
Yeah,
I remember that one as well. Stupid boy.
I remember that moment as well, seeing my book on the bookshelf the first time ever, in a bookshop where you haven't planted it there on the shelf, and just
snuck in under
seeing it on the table in Waterstones next to all these other authors that you've been reading for years and hearing about for years, and then suddenly your book is there among them, and it's like,
and yours is obviously, you started this, on A as well. You've got to wait. And you've got to go through all the other.
There's Abercrombie and Aronovich, and there's me. I'm like, damn you, Abercrombie! Damn you, Aronovich!
Yeah, but that's some great company to be in. I'm really proud to have Gamble and Game and the pretty heavy hitters. Unless I'm called, I don't know. I can't think of anything else. But that's some pretty hefty company to be in. It draws the eyes straight to your books. Why not?
I was changing my name to Aaron A. Aardvark, and that's what I'm going to have. So just let me right at the front, first shelf, first book.
That would be brilliant. Via self-publishing, Steve, you could just do that as a joke, and it'd be brilliant. Just
Aaron A. Aardvark. Mm-hmm.
That's it. Yeah.
Just to be ahead of Abercrombie.
Dark fantasy author.
Yeah. Why not?
Or just be Joe or Joey Abercrombie with 2 A's like Aaron.
J.O. Abercrombie.
That's it.
He'll love that.
There you go. That's all you need. He'll probably find that hilarious. Awesome.
So obviously, at the future, we don't know what's going on with the future and stuff, with everything that's happening in COVID and things. But once things settled back to some kind of normality, are we going to see you at conventions in the future? Is that something you hope to do anyway?
Yeah, I had so much fun at Dublin. Because I moved over here and kind of first year I was in Canada. I was missing all the big UK conventions like FantasyCon, Nine Worlds, things like that, BristolCon especially, because that's always just a great party. And I was kind of like, bit down seeing all the amazing pictures and stuff on Facebook, but managed to get to Dublin. And then, since then my love for conventions has been reignited. I'm just going to start, fingers crossed, like you said, when it all opens up, I'll be traveling all around for conventions, US, UK, abroad. Why not? It'll be a great excuse to travel. So that'll be me. Convention whore.
Well, you're a lot closer now to go to, because I've never been to any of the American ones, because it's slightly closer for you than coming over the pond.
I've only been to one in New York, and that was just what was that? That was the General Book Con at the end of the New York Book Fair. But that was great. Yeah, so many people. If we go to I really want to go to Dragon Con and a couple of the others as well. Emerald City Con as well. That'd be awesome.
Is Phoenix another? I think Phoenix is quite a big.
I think that's a big one.
Yeah. You're slightly closer to that side of the country anyway as well. So that's supposed to be a great one as well. I've heard great things about Phoenix Con. So maybe one year in the future.
Fingers crossed, right?
Distant future.
Can't wait for it to get back to normal. It's just the words indefinite were used in terms of lockdown here in Canada, which has sent my writing into a spiral, but never mind. One day, omnia temporaris, as I always remind myself. I'm one of those annoying optimists. My glass is 100% full because it's 50% water, 50% air.
Right, good.
I'm that annoying.
Okay.
Someone said that when I was out at a pub, and I thought it was so brilliant. I've stolen it, but now every time I say it, I'm like, shut up.
So the Forever King is out at the moment, and as you said, later this year we'll get the second book, Heavy Wears the Crown. So
absolutely.
Looking forward to that. Well, thanks for coming on and joining me this evening, and for talking nonsense with me for an hour.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
Good fun.
Thank you for having me.
I'll put all the links below for everyone to check out your details and get in contact with you. And we'll see you all soon. Bye, everyone.
Sounds good. Thanks.